name is Lara Williams, and I am the host of Sonographers After Dark. And joining me today is Risa Schneck. And Risa is a clinical application specialist. She works for a major manufacturing company in women's health. And so, welcome, Risa. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So, Risa and I actually worked together briefly for a period of time, and she's an excellent clinical application specialist. I really appreciate her attention to detail. And so that's why I invited her here because I know that so many sonographers are kind of burnt out with what we do. It's so easy to have injuries and just kind of be at a place where you're looking for something different. And so, Risa, I want to just kind of have a conversation around how you got into clinical apps and that pathway that led you there and what you love about it, maybe some of the challenges that come up because it's not an easy pathway either, right? It has its own unique set of challenges other than scanning every day. And so, yeah, just tell me a little bit about how you got started in this and what you love about clinical apps.
Sure. I do love it. And it is definitely a great new challenge for sonographers. And I think that was the key for me. I have started ultrasound school in 1992. So I've been in this game a long time. I've done a lot of scanning. I really love ultrasound. So I felt like, was loving what I did. And actually, my daughter went to college, and I thought, well, now is a time if I'm ready to make something different, do something different, try a new challenge. Let me see what is out there. And as luck would have it, there was an opening for an application spot in my local area. And I decided to give it a try. And I'm lucky that I had a manager who was willing to try and hire somebody who had clinical background. So I thought, if I don't do this now, I'll never try anything different. And I love the challenge. It is a way of continuing to have a career in ultrasound when you're starting to feel physically like you need something new and also mentally like you need something new. I think, you've all of a sudden you've been spending your whole life doing something that you love, but now you want to take it to a different kind of level. And there aren't a ton of pathways. There are a few others within ultrasound, but this was a really good way and it just sort of fit for me.
And that, I mean, that's awesome. So, a lot of people end up with injury, right? I know
Yeah.
I did. I had a shoulder injury from scanning and lots of, doing mobile ultrasound for over a decade,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it adds up and it's definitely a challenge. So, having another pathway to still use the skills that you have because you still get to get your hands on the probe from time to
Yes.
time. So tell me about that because I think that's maybe a fear of people who
Right.
don't want to lose their skills and they don't want to not scan at all. And maybe they're afraid that they'll never get an opportunity to scan if they go the clinical apps route. So kind of walk me through what your day looks like and what opportunities you do have to get your hands on the probe.
Sure. So that was definitely something I thought about because it has been a huge part of my life to get in there every day and, scan. And I always kind of have joked that that would be, that'd be me. That'd be the enemy is me sitting there with the probe in my hand. But there are a lot of opportunities. First of all, you get to watch a lot of ultrasound and it still feels like you're doing it and you're working with people to get the best image. So it's not a passive sort of watching ultrasound. It's very actively watching. It's working with the sonographer to get the best possible image from the system. So you might be helping them optimize a window, optimize the system, talk to them about the latest technologies, teach them things that maybe they didn't learn at school or they've sort of forgotten, have drifted away. Sometimes we become product of our habits and we don't try the new buttons. So I still feel like even when I'm watching, it's not like just sitting in a chair watching an ultrasound. You're actively working with that sonographer. So you kind of are half in that way. And then I actually do get to scan because we do a lot of testing of new softwares, testing of new equipment. We go to a lot of conferences, like all those conferences that you go to for CMEs and that your physicians go to. We stand there at the booth, but a lot of times they will do hands on scanning. So we get to scan there as well. And that's the most fun for me because it's kind of I don't want to say a free for all, but you really get to just scan whatever you want using the system you want. And you get to really learn from that. So I don't miss it. I mean, I won't say there's days where I'm watching somebody scan, like a gorgeous anatomy scan, and I'm thinking, oh, I wish that were me. but I feel like you're so actively involved with it. I don't feel too removed from it at all. And like I said, it's much like going back to school. We practice scanning ourselves, scanning our coworkers, scanning models. It's a lot of that, learning how to use a new system or a new probe or a new technology. So the companies are always educating you as to what's new and how to show the system off to its benefit. So they want you to know how to use it. So there's always opportunities to get hands on scanning. So I can say that I get just enough to do that I love it without feeling like it's too much for me.
So, brings me to say that part of clinical apps is sales, right? And so,
Mhm.
if you don't have a sales background, I have operated my own businesses. So when I got into industry, I had a little bit of that sales mentality, but not everybody has that background. So when you
Right.
come from clinical and you've never been in sales and you don't really have a business background, talk to me about kind of the skills that you had to learn and master, because you do have to a little bit
Yeah.
of sales in that, even in your demo presentations, or you're launching a product and you're helping to do that. That takes a different skill set than just clinical, right? So walk me through that and talk a little bit about how you have been able to hone in your sales skills as well.
Sure. It is definitely, while you're clinical applications specialist, you're definitely supporting sales. And, every time you're with that machine, you're trying to make the sale to the customer. Even after they own it, you want them to be happy with it. And that is something I wasn't skilled in. Didn't have background in that. It's a multifold process. Like I said, I had great people to work with me. I work with salesmen and saleswomen who were really great at teaching me how to word things, how to phrase things. I can tell you one of the things that I really had to learn was active listening. Sometimes when you're new and you're trying to sell that system, you feel, I don't want to say defense, but you always want to jump in and, tell them the new thing you learned, parrot the statement, I learned all about this new technology. Let me tell you all about it. And you don't always take the time to listen what the customer is really saying. So that was what I had to learn, was to not just, repeat everything I learned in training, but also to listen and to say, what are your needs? What are your problem points? Like, where are you struggling and how can I come up with something to help you? Like, what system do we have? What technology, what technique can I show you that will help your points that are difficult? So that took me a little bit of learning, but I feel like that was a huge skill for me. And you learn from, much like ultrasound, you learn how people are saying things. Like, I know when I started doing ultrasound, I had to learn the pattern in my head. This is the top of the baby's head. We look down from on top inside the baby's brain. And then by the time I left ultrasound, it was like I was giving the Disney tour, because I was constantly narrating the same things and you feel very comfortable with it. And by listening to other applications people and to salespeople and to marketing people, I kind of picked up some of their sayings and which ones fit with me. And that's how I learned to talk the talk. But for most importantly, I had to learn how to listen to the customer and what they were really saying.
And I think customers don't always know what they want or what they need, right? I know I've
Right.
experienced where
Mhm.
maybe they're not really sure how to express it, or they're not sure of what technology might, they're not aware of what technologies are available to them that can really solve those pain points. So I think being able to kind of interpret what those needs are is definitely something that a clinical app specialist has to do, because even though when you're working in industry and you have a sales rep, you have your clinical rep, the sales rep does all the sale right, but they're not
Right.
necessarily room with you. You're the one that goes in and you're really working with the customer to understand what they want and what they need and how to provide a solution for them. So I think that you're really that critical piece of that puzzle to make sure that they get what they're looking for in that purchase. Because let's face it, most most organizations, they're going to buy an ultrasound system, and whether that's one or 10 or however many, they're not going to buy again for a little while right? So when
Yeah.
they buy that piece of equipment, it has to work for them for quite a while. And so they have to be able to be happy. And then talk to me about how you support that afterwards, right? Because it's not just about getting the sale, it's
Yeah.
about supporting that overall training as well.
That's a great point, because it really, when you demonstrate it, and that is a small part of the process. really the installation of the system and teaching everybody how to use it and making it work in their environment is probably more difficult because it's like a test drive versus owning the car. And now you have to teach them how to use everything and you have to make everything work, make all the pieces work for them, like make sure all their numbers come across and make sure, we customize the systems, make sure it's customized for this customer. Are there annotations how they want them? Do the presets look the way they want them? We all have different eyes, and you go into different locations, you realize everybody likes something a little different. So trying to get that is a lot more work than just making it look good, for a day. So usually we go and we do an installation of a system. We install it. It can take, depending on how many systems and how many sonographers, it can take a couple days to a week, 2 weeks up front. And then we'd like to follow back up. So I'll say, I'm coming back in a month, make a list. You can call me if you have any big problems, but usually in the month you come back and they have a whole new set of questions because now they've used it and it's not how do I freeze, how do I print, how do I measure? It's, how do I make this more contrasty? How do I enhance the bones? It's the more fun, more ultrasound geared questions rather than the just meat and potatoes of, freeze and print. So it's
Right.
it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. And that support process lasts for a long time. And that's how you build relationships. I think that's the biggest thing with sales is that it comes down to building relationships with your customers, with your
Yeah.
clients, because then they know they can trust you. They've trusted you in the demo. They now trust you to get them to where they need to be on an everyday basis and make it work for them. And then they can trust you again when it's time for another sale later, right? This is how that life cycle of sales works. So,
Right.
you know, I think that clinical apps is such a vital part of that whole cycle. So, tell me, obviously those are some really unique things to clinical apps, but there's challenges that come around with that as well. I think that it's a great role, but it's not for everyone, right?
Right.
So I think that, there's a lot of challenges that are just unique to that, not necessarily to any organization or company or manufacturer, but it's unique to that type of position. So let's talk about some of those challenges that you've faced, and that, you've had to just kind of understand that this is part of the role that you're doing.
I think the first and biggest challenge is trying something completely different. You're on the other side of the coin here. You're not the one doing the
Yeah.
patient. So that, making that change, first of all, is hard. We get in our habits. I was at my last job for a lot of years, so leaving that was difficult. But then I was so glad when I did because it was new challenges. But the basic day to day is going to be different. Your every day is not going to be the same. For some people, the structure and the routine of always knowing the same start time, same finish time, being in the same or two or three locations is there's something very good about it. I enjoyed that myself, the routine. With this job, it's a good and bad, but you're someplace different every week. I have grown to really love that. I love meeting new people. I love learning from all my customers. They teach me so much. Everywhere I go, they do things a little different. It's a different physician, a different point of view. I learn a lot of tips and tricks that I pass on, but it is different every week, and that can be difficult. And I think depending on where you live and who you're working for, you can have more or less travel. Some people love the travel, they jump at it, they like to be away all the time. Some people prefer to be, more in their, sleep home every night. And then most people are somewhere in the middle. So that's definitely something to take. I always tell people who are getting into it, take in consideration is, find out how much travel it is and make sure that that works with your lifestyle and your personality. And you don't always know until you do it, but I think it's the one thing we really do try to talk to people about, because I would hate for see somebody give up like a job they already love and then find out, oh my gosh, this isn't for me. So we try to prepare them when we talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's important. There's life that you're used to. And then when you go in, if you are one of those situations where you're traveling a lot or you're flying a lot, that's a life that can be a little lonely sometimes, right? I mean, the reality, you're in a hotel room by yourself. Not always. Sometimes you're at group events or you're doing things with other, clinical apps or your sales rep or something like that. But there are often times where it's a hotel by yourself, right? And
Right.
so not comfortable with that, clinical apps might not be for you. Right?
Right.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
So, I think that getting a dose of reality and understanding that is, like you said, critical because who wants to give up a job that they really love and that
Right.
even though it's stressful on the body or there's other things going on, there's some routine there. And if you're not a person that can handle being outside of routine, yeah,
Yes.
then clinical might not be for you. So
For me, I was worried because I have become a creature of routine, but that's part of why I really wanted to try it was I wanted to break and do something different and get my brain wrapped around something else. And I have really grown to love it. In a way, it makes me embrace my customers more because I'm with them all day. And even though it's different every week, there are obviously I go back to the same place a couple times, but it really lets me get to know my customers better because by the time I come in the morning, I'm really excited to talk to people, meet new people, hear what they have to say. So the quiet time in the evenings has actually I think made me almost better at applications because I'm really excited when I'm really excited to get up and go in somewhere. I guess is the
yeah,
best way to put it.
have that people interaction, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Anything else that you can think of that, might be beneficial for someone who's looking to get into clinical apps and get out of everyday clinical scanning?
I mean, I highly recommend it. I love it. I think it's a great opportunity, like I said, to take something you love and approach it from a different point of view. And I really have learned a lot. Like I didn't realize, how many different things there were and different ways of doing things. And that has been great for me. I'd like to think I was good at what I did. We all do. And then you go different places and you just see how they do it. And, just even the same kind of exam, how they do things a little differently, the different images they get and different physicians, they'll take the time to teach you, even though your applications. And then I love teaching. So I love educating my customers at the same time. So it's such a give and take. So that's really one of the benefits, but it is, your brain works really hard. So it is starting to learn things in a completely different way. You have to go back to your physics. You have to really understand the systems. It's a lot of new knowledge. So it's not like you're going in to teach them how to do an ultrasound because that's really not your role. But you're going in to help them learn how to optimize and the buttons. And you have to be prepared that they might say, well, how do I get the so and so? And you're thinking, well, I never got the so and so, but you have to learn how to do it, and that can be it's a lot to learn and you're always learning. So if you're kind of feeling like, oh, this is I already know how to do this, this will be a piece of cake, it's probably not going to be a piece of cake. It's a lot to learn. Now I really wanted that, so it's perfect for me, but it definitely took me, I would say, 2 to 3 years to really feel like, whew, okay, like I'm still learning, but I feel like I found my feet.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, I think that the application process to become a clinical application specialist
Mhm.
can be grueling, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of competition.
Yes.
So, in your mind and in your experience, what really sets someone apart to be considered for a role in clinical applications?
I think you need a certain amount of scanning background. I think you need to have done it for a few years because even though you don't know everything, I don't know everything and I didn't specialize in everything. I have my areas I'm more confident in. You have to at least have a basic background and understanding of the area of ultrasound you're going to be doing applications for. The next thing is probably personality. I think personality is a big part of it because you need to be, a little bit more outgoing because you're going to have to, every week, every day, you're walking into someplace new and introducing yourself. And it's a little scary sometimes. Like, I get a little nervous going into a different hospital and new people. And I almost get nervous every time. And then after an hour, I'm like, what was I so nervous about? Everybody's great. But there is that you have to be willing to put yourself out there. So kind of a little bit of a go-getter personality. Working, I won't say it's not just working from home because you're really not home a lot, but working independently is very different than having a structured schedule. You have to be flexible to a certain extent because things can change. So having that flexible mentality and a place in your life where you can be flexible with your schedule helps. So I think that's a big thing, and you have to be a little bit willing to complete the work on your own without somebody kind of driving you. Like one of the great things about ultrasound when I scanned clinically that I loved was at the end of the day, you're done. You go home and there's not a lot of work you can bring home with you because you're not bringing patients in an ultrasound machine home with you. With
What?
applications, yeah, I know. I was going to say most of us don't have that, but
Yeah.
with applications, you definitely have a lot of work a night. There can be meetings, you've got reports to do, so you have to be willing to have that flexibility. Now you'll have, I always say it evens out in the wash. You'll have some shorter days, so you'll have an office day, and then you'll have some long days, and then maybe a meeting at the end of it. And so you have to be willing to accept that and be a little flexible with that. And depending on not just your personality, but where you are in your life, that may or may not work for you.
As much as when my son was younger, I would have loved to do clinical ops at that point in time, but I knew I couldn't commit to that.
Right.
He was little to be home for him. And so I think that again, you do have to evaluate your circumstance to make sure that it can support travel, it can support the days that are longer because they happen. And
Right.
you're right, there absolutely is a give and take to it. There are days that even out for sure. And so there's a lot of benefit and flexibility that you have in your schedule, which is
Hmm.
nice. Time depending on where you work and what organization you work for, you have a lot of flexibility to be able to schedule at your convenience and make sure that it
Right.
works for any major events going on in your life as well. So that's always the nice part about it, is that there is a little bit of extra flexibility than you might
Hmm.
have if you're okay. So yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you could think of that we might be want to share?
No, I definitely think it's a great opportunity for people to try something different. And I think if you really want to get in it, talk to the applications people that come to see you, because they can really tell you how it is in your area and tell you about the job. So next time they come in, don't be afraid to ask them questions. I love when customers ask me questions, not just about the systems, but about what I do, because I think everybody's always looking to share something really good and exciting with a fellow sonographer. Like, I want people to know that there's growth in this field. We really need a pathway for all these great sonographers we have.
Absolutely. So, I have been very blessed in my career to have some opportunities that I just kind of created for myself, quite honestly. I've,
Mhm.
done my own
Yeah.
businesses and a firm and things like that. And so, but not everybody's at that place where they have that ability to do it or the drive to do it. And so clinical apps is kind of somewhere in between, where you still have to be very driven and motivated, but you don't necessarily have to go all in and be
Right.
completely by yourself. You have a lot of availability and
Support. Yeah.
flexibility. So yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
and, again, I've always appreciated how you work with your customers. I know all of your customers that I've talked to love you, and they really
Thank you.
appreciate the professionalism that you bring to this industry. And so, again, I'm Lara Williams. This has been another episode of Sonographers After Dark. Don't forget to hit like and share. I'll see you next time.